Hey doll artist, Kim here from CustomDollBaby.com. This is video number 2 in our Rooting 101 series. So one of the most popular questions that I get from beginners is, which needle should I buy? And it makes a lot of sense. There's all these different gauges and barred versus fork versus compact. It's a very complicated world in rooting needles. Unfortunately though, I can't advise on what kind of needle you should buy unless I know how you root. So before we go through all the different kinds of needles and what those numbers mean, let's establish what I would consider the 3 main rooting methods. There's lots and lots of rooting videos out there on YouTube and available for purchase. Everyone has their own way of doing it, but from my observation, there's really 3 main ways out there. And they are the stab and grab technique, which is very popular for beginners. You see this in a lot of the beginner tutorials. I don't know why, I don't think it's easier actually, but anyway, we'll get my opinions later. The second is the root-a-loop, which is great if you're trying to catch 1 or 2 hairs at a time. And the final is the single strand cuticle aligned rooting. It's a longer name, but it's not that much more complicated. So let's take a look at each one in more detail. Okay, so I broke back out my test head. I've got some dark mohair, so hopefully it'll be easier to see. The first thing we're going to demonstrate is the stab and grab technique. So stab and grab can be done from the end or from the middle. And the basic idea is you take a lock of hair, okay, however much hair you want. You take your needle, this guy is a 36 gauge crown, so it's a relatively large needle with relatively large barbs, but there's only 3 barbs. And we'll talk about that more later. So then you aim your needle in the direction that you want your hair to go, and just simply push the needle through the lock of hair. And you do this however many times you feel like you need to do it. And when you pull your lock away, lo and behold, there's some hair that's been rooted. You can also do the stab and grab method from the middle. So this is folding the hair in half, so for every strand that you root, you're basically getting 2 strands. And I guess this is beneficial if you have a doll that you're trying to put a lot of hair into. Whew, that is tiring. All right. And lo and behold, there's your hair again. Notice this is shorter because we rooted it from the middle, whereas this one we rooted from the end. And let's see if we can zoom in and see how those hair plugs look. So now for the opinionated part. So my problem with the stab and grab method is you don't have a lot of control over how many hairs you're actually grabbing. So you're really at the mercy of your needle to only pick up 1 hair at a time. And when you have a needle that's fine enough to only grab 1 hair at a time, a decent fraction of your hair plugs aren't going to have any hair in them at all. So the Kim complaint on the stab and grab method is that it's just very difficult to control. I can't see where I'm putting my hair. I can't see how many hairs I'm putting, and for that reason I try to avoid rooting in that way. But I don't want to discourage anyone who roots this way. I mean, I'm sure there are artists out there who get gorgeous results because they've sort of optimized their needle to barb ratio. I'm just not one of them, so I don't root that way. Okay, so the next way that you can root is what I like to call the root-a-loop. It's fun because it rhymes. So I've still got the same lock of hair that we were stabbing and grabbing with. I'm going to fold it in half until I have a loop. And in general, actually, I'd want even less hair than that. So maybe we're going to do half that lock. Smooth it out as much as you can. And then root a loop. Well, you have a loop. And what you can see now are individual strands of hair. So I'm going to switch to a different kind of needle for this one. I'm going to get this guy is a 42 gauge regular. Regular needles have 3 sides and 6 barbs. You can just barely see glimmering in the light there. So I like these because I have more shots at grabbing my rooting. Actually get a little further away from the other section so you can see. So this is a method I like to use for what I call the premium dolls. So the hair is rooted single strand, one at a time, one or two at a time. And what I love about this method is I can see each individual hair and I can see where I'm putting it. And that makes me very happy because I'm a picky rooter and I want control over where these hairs are landing. I mean, it is a little more time consuming, right, than the previous method because you have to grab each individual hair and place it. But again, I love the control that it gives me. So I can land those hairs exactly where I want them to be, and that makes me happy. A alternative of the Rooter Loop is what I use for my collector's dolls. Collector's dolls are a sort of low-end brand that we have at Custom Doll Baby. They're not technically Reborns because I use traditional doll hair plugs. And this is great for collectors, especially the Ashton Drake collectors who don't feel like they want a reborn doll, but they still love the customization that they can get at CustomDollBaby.com. And to root my collector's dolls is very similar. So I'm rooting a loop still. I'm rooting the hair from the middle, but I'm grabbing a bunch of it at a time and I'm using the needle to massage it in. And with the collector's dolls, typically I'll single strand root or root a loop around the hairline so that you don't see the big chunky hair plugs around the face. Okay, so this is a version of root a loop where instead of getting a single strand, you're getting a big chunk of hair. I mean, you see just the difference between these fine individually rooted hairs versus these huge chunky hairs versus these kind of random hairs. Yeah, okay. So that's number 2, rooting method. The third and final method that I'm going to demonstrate is the single strand cuticle aligned rooting. So this is probably the most correct way to do it. You have the cuticle alignment, which allows the hair to be less frizzy and to lay more smoothly. And you're also doing one strand at a time. So you're truly micro rooting. So this is how you do it. So you start with a lock of hair. I actually switched to human hair because it's much easier to see and easier to work with. You pull a few strands out of that lock and you take the needle. You want to make sure that the barb side is down so you can just barely see glimmering in the light there the barbs on the corners. So I want one of those corners at all times facing down. And I'm just going to very gently push the hair into the vinyl. Zoom in a little more for you. So I like this a lot for my masterpiece dolls because it gives me really good control over where I'm rooting. I can place each hair exactly where I want it and I don't have to worry about picking up more hairs than I need. So for the super high-end Reborn dolls, this is a very nice way to root. See how pretty and neat that is? I hope you enjoyed this brief overview of the 3 main rooting methods. Now that we know what our options are, you can decide which category you tend to fall into rooting-wise, and then we can discuss in more detail which needles you need to get the best results. Thank you so much for watching. Please like the video, and I'll see you next time.